quote the scripture, and then let's talk about this prediction of when the Messiah will come.
Daniel 9:24 talks about a special plan for a special people in a special place. He says, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and thy holy city. Now, the 70-week period of time, and in the context of chapter 9, he's talking about years. And in fact, when we look what will happen at the end of those 490 years, found there in verse 24, it has to be years that he's dealing with, and it's 77's better translated from any of the translations. That's a 490-year period of time. It's during that period of time the special plan is put in place. Then he says, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people, a special people. The people of Daniel were the Jewish people, and a special place, thy holy city. Nehemiah chapter 11 verse 2 describes Jerusalem as the holy city. So a special plan upon a special people in a special place will lead us during this time of 490 years. Now that sets up the 70 weeks of Daniel. When you get to verses 25 and 26 of chapter 9, then you start to focus on that prophecy talking about the Messiah who will come. In verse 25, he talks about a command given to someone to go back and rebuild the walls of the city and the streets of the city, not the temple, because the temple will have already been built. But Nehemiah, the one who would go back to Jerusalem and restore the walls of the city and the streets of the city, was the one who would play a key role, and he would be the one given the command to do that. He was the cupbearer for Artaxerxes. This is the book of Nehemiah. His cousin came from Jerusalem and said Jerusalem was the laughing stock of the world. The temple was standing there. It was a simple temple. It wasn't like Solomon's temple, and it would be later refurbished by Herod the Great, become a majestic building in the city of Jerusalem. But at this time, just a simple temple, and the walls were torn down. The streets were all in rubbish. And so Nehemiah went to King Artaxerxes and said, may I return to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple? That happened approximately 445 BC when the command was given to go back. So Artaxerxes gives the command to Nehemiah that he may go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the walls of the city. It tells us in the text there that from the time that command is given until the time of the appearance of the Messiah, HaMashiach, in the text in verse 26 of the book of Daniel, chapter 9, it's talking about a period of time that would be 69 of the 70 weeks. In other words, 483 of the 490 years. Well, indeed, at that time in history, after 445 BC, when you put in all the leap years and everything else that's considered, you come up with the time when Jesus Christ was here on the earth. In fact, Jesus Christ, when he stepped on the Mount of Olives and looked across the Kidron Valley at the Temple Mount, Luke chapter 19, verses 40 and following, he made the statement, if you'd have only read the book, you would have known I was to be here today. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, but today. And what's interesting, if you do the numbers, Sir Robert Anderson of England did the numbers, but if you do the numbers, you would see from the time the command was given by Artaxerxes to Nehemiah to go back and rebuild the walls of the city and the streets of the city, it was 173,880 days on the dot when Jesus stood there. That's why I said if you had read the book, you would have known us to be here today, not yesterday, not tomorrow, today. That's how specific Bible prophecy is, and it helps us to understand that Jesus Christ showed up right on time. But that's not the end of the story. It also says in the text that he would be cut off. Now that's a terminology referring to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. He was crucified 33 AD, I believe, was the year that he was crucified. He was cut off. By the way, it says that he would be cut off or crucified before the temple was destroyed and the city devastated. Now that happened in 70 AD. That's just absolute history. Any record of history will tell you General Titus and the Roman army came off the Mount of Olives, crossed the Kidron Valley, entered up to the Temple Mount, destroyed the temple, devastated the city, and dispersed the Jews to the four corners of the earth in fulfillment of another Bible prophecy, Deuteronomy chapter 28. Jesus Christ is the only one in history that meets every one of the qualifications in the prophecy found in Daniel 9, verses 24 to 26.